Hi, I'm Rainer and welcome to my training room. So today, probably a fairly short video. I just wanted to go over a problem that I caused for myself by not checking things properly. So when I wired all of this lower deck of my layout for my yard, the whole layout to begin with was wired in blocks so that I could run either DC or DCC on any section of it. And my idea was to use the yard as a single block. And so when I initially wired it, I just ran a single set of feeders at the entrance to the yard, and all of the power is being fed through the turnouts into the yard. Now, all of my turnouts that I had from my older layout that I've reused here are all Pico Insulfrog turnouts, and that's what I've been buying from the store. And everything worked well until a couple of days ago. So everything was working perfectly, and the way the Insulfrogs work is they route the power to whichever track is selected at the turnout, and it makes the rest of the tracks go dead. Now, that's great. That actually is nice because it's automatic power routing for a yard like this, especially when you're using DC. You just select the track you want to run to your loco on, and all of the other tracks, even if there's locomotives on them, are dead and nothing moves. So it makes wiring really, really simple. The problem was that I decided, I had decided this earlier, that I wanted to do this, but I was putting it off until I had enough locomotives that are running on DCC. And now, over time, over the last few months, I have converted quite a few of my locomotives to DCC. So I have this one here, one of the steam locomotives back there, and I've got a whole row of various other diesel locomotives that are all running on DCC now. So what I decided to do as I was working on this railroad shop and reworking some of the tracks was to drop feeders to all 6 of these tracks, and I ran them to a terminal block at the other end, which is being fed from the same source, the same toggle switch as the yard lead. So the idea was that when I have power turned on to the yard, all the tracks have power all the time, so that I can run lights on the locomotives. I can move a locomotive on a track even if it's not selected, because you can do that with DCC. And theoretically, it should have worked just fine. Because the way these Insulfrog turnouts work, if you look right in here, the 2 rails that come up the center are electrically isolated from each other. There's a little plastic part on the frog right in here, and so there's an insulating section here and an insulating section here. They're relatively short, so they don't cause a lot of problems on most locomotives. And the way it works is when the track is selected to go straight through right here, this part that moves in here is touching this outside rail, and because if the power is being fed from this side, it touches this rail and feeds the power right through, and there's a jumper underneath from here up to there, so it feeds power up to there. And this side is dead because it would have been fed from this side if it was going the other way. So when it's going straight, the outside rail, of course, has power. This outside rail has power, so this could be in a DC section. If you're going this way, this would be positive, and that's negative. And again, if you're talking about DC, the negative would feed through here, through there, but there would be no positive power going through because it's not touching down here. You flip it the other way, it disconnects the negative from this rail, but turns on the positive to this rail, so now the power goes up here. No problem, because the power is on or off up there, and if I'm feeding from the other side, there's no conflict, no issues. Now, strangely, when I made all of that connection, those connections on those tracks, I flipped the power on to my yard, and immediately the system starts buzzing, and I had a dead short. I'm like, what did I do wrong? Because before I put those power feeders, everything worked just fine. So I disconnected the jumper bars on my terminal block, and everything went back to working. So that's really strange. And then I decided to do what I probably should have noticed right at the beginning. This turnout leading in, not leading right into the yard, but the first turnout on the first pair of tracks is different than all the rest. And I bought a few turnouts from an elderly lady whose husband could, because of health reasons, no longer use his model railroad, so they had taken it apart and they were selling off all the stuff. And I bought a bundle of Insel Frog turnouts from her. What I didn't realize was that one of them was an Electrofrog. So the Electrofrogs work differently. They still power route, but the problem is that this part up in here, and I don't have a separate one to show you. I'll throw the other one on the screen, a picture of it that I took with my phone. But this center part right in here is all one piece of metal, and through here it's all metal. And so you have the outside rails are separate, but the way the Electrofrogs route the power is when you flip it to go straight. This, again, if you're talking about DC, the outside rail would be positive, the negative would feed through here, but what you would end up with is on this diverging track, you would actually end up with both rails being negative. So in a DC system, still works fine as long as you're not feeding power from the other side. And then when you flip it the other way, what happens is the negative goes up here, the negative up there is broken, and now you have a positive on both sides. On this side, again, you don't have a completed circuit because you don't have a positive and negative. Not a problem. The problem was that because I was feeding power from the other side through a terminal block, that one Electrofrog in my yard caused the negative and the positive to short, and because it was going through a terminal block, it shorted the whole yard, not just that one track. Easy fix. Took me a few minutes to figure it out because it's at the back and it's not really obvious. I finally started looking at the turnouts and go, oh, one of them is wrong. So it turns out in this whole big pack of Insel Frogs that I bought from this lady, there were actually two Electrofrog turnouts on it. One of them is at the back over there on the layout. It doesn't cause a problem because there's no power being fed from the other side of it, so it just works fine. But in this situation, because I went and electrically linked all of these tracks together, meaning they all had power at the same time, it didn't matter where I put that turnout, I was creating a dead short. Easy fix. I just put a little cut in the rails on both of the tracks coming out of the turnout, put a little electrical break in there. Everything works as it's supposed to. But it was just one of those little things that I know how the Electrofrogs work, but I didn't notice that I had one. And it worked perfectly until it didn't. So anyway, I just thought I'd put this up in case somebody is ever having some weird electrical gremlins. Make sure what you bought is actually what you thought you bought, and take a look at them a little more closely. Easy fix. Didn't have to pull up any track. Just need to pull out the Dremel and make a couple of cuts and problem solved. Anyway, if you can see back here, I am working on some ideas of what I'm going to do for a backdrop. This is an extra wall section that came with that, so I was just kind of playing with it to see how much room I have. Watched a recent video on Boomer Dioramas, and he was showing what he does for backdrop buildings, and it gave me a few ideas. So I'm going to see what I can come up with here. And I also made up a few more trees yesterday with some more kind of fall colors, and spun them up just like I showed in a recent video with the drill, and then put some different types of flocking on them, and some of them I actually sprayed a little bit of red and orange paint to try to get some fall color. So I've got some of them planted up there on the hillside with little clothes pegs and pieces of whatever I could find to prop them up until the glue dries, and then we'll see. So I will start working on figuring out what I can do for a backdrop, and if I come up with something good, I will put together another video about it. If it doesn't work, I probably won't put a video out about it, but I think it'll work. Anyway, thank you for watching. See you next time.